Welcome to Run Mode, an industrial automation podcast by Powermation. I'm your host, Terry Bush. In today's episode, we'll be talking with Dennis Kletter from Rittal. Rittal is a key supplier for Powermation, providing industrial enclosure solutions. But first, let's go to the news. What are some of the industrial automation trends in 2025? The rise of AI-driven automation. We have a lot of vendors spending time in the AI space, and it'll be exciting to see what they create. Widespread adoption of industrial IIoT. That means there's some growth needed in the edge computing and also cybersecurity and automation, making sure the bad guys don't get in. Expansion of collaborative robotics and advancements in autonomous robotics. Sustainable automation solutions, things that are green, things that can bring us into the future. Adaptation of digital twins. Mimicking a system so that we can test program changes, we can use it for validation and other things. And then modular and scalable automation systems. Instead of building very small things at a high rate of speed, we instead build assemblies and build those things together. DeepSeek is an open source large language model that relies on what's known as inference time computing, which in layman's terms means they activate only the most relevant portions of their model for each query, and that saves money and computing power. DeepSeek says its model uses roughly 10 to 40 times less energy than similar US AI technologies. A reduction in that seamlessly would sharply cut the need for energy gobbling data centers. We're here today with Dennis Kletter from Rittal. Let's talk a little bit about yourself, your history, and your industry expertise.
Well, thanks for having us here today. My name is Dennis Kletter. I've been in the industry for about 15 years, 9 of those spent with Rittal. Currently the channel manager for the Midwest region. I've had several different jobs through my career with Rittal, but ended up now supporting the relationship between Rittal and our channel partners like Powermation.
Let's do a little deeper dive into Rittal. Talk about the company, how long it's been in place, some of the other aspects of Rittal.
Well, Rittal was founded in 1961. We are the largest manufacturer of electrical and IT enclosures in the world. We have relatively small market share in the United States compared to the rest of the globe. All told, we have about 15,000 employees worldwide. Founded in 1961, we were the first to offer standardized electrical enclosures. Currently, we have about 80 subsidiaries around the world. Our U.S. location was opened in 1981, so we've been in the United States for about 43 years. We have U.S. headquarters just outside of Chicago, Illinois, and our manufacturing facility is located in southwestern Ohio. There we have about a 512,000 square foot manufacturing facility on a 105-acre campus.
So what sets Rittal apart from the competitors in the space?
What really sets us apart is, the complementary portfolio of products and companies that we have to support the products. For instance, our owner owns a steel manufacturing company to help support the steel consumption that our enclosures use in the manufacturing process. That would be one example. A really good example would be ePlan. So ePlan is a Rittal business owned by the Friedhelm Loh Group, and it's a technical design software that allows for virtual prototyping and downstream sharing of efficiencies in panel building. Another would be our Rittal automation systems. Those are machines that will help the panel builder or end customer to be more efficient in manufacturing their product by using a vertical 4-axis CNC milling machine. What that will do is allow them to put holes and cutouts into the enclosure and tap the back panel for mounting of equipment.
Sounds like you guys are focusing on sort of the efficiency side of the panels and what you guys can bring in. Let's talk a little bit more about the customization features of your enclosures.
Yeah, the main product that we manufacture in the United States is the TS8 freestanding enclosure. Now that's a modular enclosure. It's different than what our competition might provide. So we have a frame that carries the weight of the back panel on all of the equipment inside of the enclosure, rather than taking that back panel and hanging it on the back of an enclosure like our competition might do. What that allows is for expandability of the enclosure itself. So if you can imagine, adding multiple bays together would be easy to maneuver until it gets to the final location to be installed, whereas a unibody or welded box enclosure, that would be something that you would not be able to achieve with a welded box. We've also got some other products that are important to talk about today. Smaller enclosures, our AX enclosure, that's manufactured in a fully automated plant in Higher, Germany. And we approach that product a little bit differently. So it all starts from the very beginning. We want to make it efficient for the customer to use that product. So we wrap it in shrink wrap. So what that does is that reduces the disposables and the recyclables rather, that the customer has to manage. We also don't install the back panel in that enclosure. So the thought process is there that you would take that back panel, you would set that aside to modify it, you'd have to open the enclosure. We've reduced that labor. Along with the door, we don't attach the door to the enclosure. And what that does is that makes it a little more safe, because you can take that door off, set it aside so it doesn't get damaged, or send it off to be modified. So when you're modifying a large number of those, it really creates efficiencies for the panel builder.
So let's talk a little bit about that. It's I know at Powermation we've been cutting those panels, drilling the holes and tapping those back panels and assembling these types of things, kind of a customer first approach. Can you tell a little bit about kind of how we work together as an organization, and those machines that we're talking about, those CNC machines, a little bit more detail on those?
Yeah, so Powermation was the first distributor in Minnesota to purchase a Perforex machine. That's a machine that we manufacture. That's, like I said, it's a vertical 4-axis CNC milling machine. What that does is that will allow you to put holes and cutouts in the enclosure, and through your modification center be able to also assemble and add other accessories into the enclosure. So it was so successful here in Minnesota that you purchased a second machine for your location in Wisconsin.
And having those panels and those doors separately sort of helps us out as well. So our team can be putting these things in the machine without unpacking a box, drilling and punching all the holes, and then putting it all back together and trying to tape the box back together. These things are independently put together and
yeah, that's a really good
sent.
point. That's a really good point, because a modular solution allows you to just modify, say, a door or a back panel or a side panel separately from having to put an entire enclosure onto that Perforex machine to do the modifications.
And then you talked a little bit about the modularity, which is sort of interesting, because you build out a system and you say, oh, we had so many feet worth of panel space, and guess what? We need a few more feet more. You're not ripping everything out, buying a brand new box, bolting it on the wall. With your TS8s, you can adapt, you can expand those boxes, so, and it can grow in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a real advantage of the Rittal solution, is to be able to grow with the customer. So like you described, as the customer grows and their needs grow for a larger enclosure, rather than purchasing a new enclosure, they can simply purchase an additional bay and bay that to the existing enclosure for the expandability to meet their growing needs.
Or if they make a mistake in the engineering design and they need more space.
That's true. That is true.
So in the years you've been working with Rittal, can you describe a particularly challenging project that you worked on, or something that was sort of fun or interesting?
Well, we had recently had a solution that we provided to a customer. The customer had a very small footprint, and like many customers, a need to separate their high voltage from their low voltage. We couldn't necessarily put a row of enclosures, So we configured the frames to be a cube so that it took up a smaller footprint. We separated the high voltage from the low voltage. High voltage used our bus bar solution, and the low voltage in the back half of the enclosure. Then we moved the doors and the side panels around to provide access from where the customer had access to get into the enclosure. So rather than having the doors on either side of this cube, we had some on the side and some on the front. So a completely modular solution that you can provide for a customer to meet their needs.
In the news, we've been hearing a lot about data centers, and I've even heard conversations about the amount of energy required to be able to give enough electricity to these data centers and whatnot. Can you kind of draw a parallel between the lessons learned in that industry and what we're doing in the industrial space, realizing that there's sort of two different areas of expertise, but I can imagine the cooling, all that heat generated from those microprocessors requires cooling, and some of the things and advancements that you guys have done in that space.
Yeah, we've been providing enclosure cooling for a very long time. So when you talk about a data center requiring that cooling capacity, we've been doing that in an enclosure, an industrial enclosure, for years. Really, we provide several different types of cooling products. We classify them as open loop, where you would draw in the environmental air into the enclosure to provide cooling. We just launched a new product called the Blue E Plus fans and filters. It's a very, very unique product. We've changed the filter media to that, to a perforated filter to allow more CFM through the enclosure, or through the fan rather. And then we can also control that with an IoT module and integrate a temperature or humidity sensor with that. So that would be an open loop solution. Then we also have closed loop solutions, starting with like an air-to-air heat exchanger where you're not able to cool below the ambient temperature, or a thermoelectric cooler, all the way up to an air conditioner. We also have a product called the Blue E Plus air conditioner. That's a very unique product because we use dual technology in that. So at lower heat loads, we use a heat pipe technology. At a higher heat load, then a compressor kicks on, much like a traditional air conditioner. And what that does is that will, by using both technologies at one time, will reduce the energy consumption, smooth out the spikes in temperature in the enclosure itself. And in many cases, we can see up to 75% energy savings to the customer, which is really important for their energy credits.
Can you talk a little bit about some of that stuff, some of the insights, future development, what we could expect in enclosure technologies moving forward?
Yeah, we've got some new products that we're currently have launched, and some in the future. First would probably be our wall-mounted vented unit, and that's a Type 3R outdoor cabinet for a large drive. What we do there is we integrate the open loop cooling into the enclosure itself to draw air across the drive and cool that. Like I said, that's an outdoor solution. It's gaining in popularity right now. Some of the other things we're expanding our hygienic design line of products. So those are designed primarily for the food and bev vertical market. Slope-topped enclosures with completely concealed hinges, so there's no place for water or bacteria to rest on that, and really designed for a situation where you would have a high pressure, high temperature wash down happening. I think another exciting product that we're going to be launching this year will be our double door enclosure without the mullion. With a modular solution, sometimes you want to have a full back panel. This, because of a modular solution, you would have a mullion that would prohibit you from putting a large back panel into that. We're going to have a removable mullion that will allow a customer to insert one single large back panel into a double door or double bayed enclosure. And I think finally the last thing that's very exciting for us is the next generation of TS8 was launched in Europe a few years ago. Call that VX25. That's going to be launched in the United States probably in the coming years, 26, 27 timeframe. The key there is we want to build that product in the United States, so it's a matter of procuring the machinery to actually manufacture that product there. But that's something down the road.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the additional resources that Rittal has for customers or people like PowerMation can utilize.
Well, I'm glad you asked that too. One thing that PowerMation is very good at is their engineering expertise, being able to understand what the end customer needs and engineer a solution for that. We have resources to complement that. Our system consultants are available to help from everything from laying out a enclosure solution to a disconnect, which can get very complicated solution, calculating heat loads, all the way up to helping lay out a bus bar system for power distribution. One last thing that they're very good at doing is working with your team to do climate surveys at end customers. And what that will do is that will give the customer an inventory of all the climate products that they currently have in their facility, allow them to understand what's working, what they might need to improve on, any maintenance that might need to be done, or any replacements that might need to be done.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to think about when you're talking about efficiency, space savings, and all those things, and it's really nice to see Rittal is kind of on their A game when it comes to keeping track of that. So,
yeah, and I think the key piece is to collaborate between Rittal and the excellent sales engineers that PowerMations has.
Well, thanks very much for your time. I'm sure we'll be talking in the future because we do seem to rub elbows every once in a while in the hallways of PowerMation.
Thanks, Terry.
For listeners interested in learning more about Rittal, reach out to your PowerMation account rep or visit powermation.com. I would like to thank Dennis for being on the show today, and I would like to thank you for listening. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and podcast to stay up to date on future episodes. See you next time.